In Kyoto, there's a style of house that solved a housing affordability crisis over 1,000 years before we had that phrase. The trick was simple. Tax collectors charged property owners based on how much street frontage their house had, not how much total space it used. So builders got clever. They built narrow, really narrow, and then they went deep. The result is called a Machiya, and it's nicknamed the eel's bed house, because from above, it looks exactly like one. A sliver of frontage stretching back into a long, deep footprint. And buried in the middle of that narrow shape is the real genius. A tiny interior garden, sometimes barely 6 feet across, that lights and cools the entire house. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that works, and why it might be the smartest lesson available for anyone building small today. If you like seeing centuries-old solutions to problems modern small-space living still struggles with, subscribe now. We cover a different overlooked design idea every single week. Let's get into it. A machiya is a traditional wooden Japanese townhouse, built primarily in Kyoto between the Edo period and the early 20th century, originally combining a merchant's shop at the street-facing front with family living space stretching back behind and above it. The style actually traces back further still. Its urban planning roots reach into the Heian period, over 1,000 years ago, when the aristocracy began selling off land to commoners, and street-facing plots became prime territory for setting up shop. The defining shape comes directly from that old frontage tax, narrow at the street, often only 5 to 6 meters wide, but running 30 meters or more deep into the block. The long, slender eel's bed layout, unagi no nedoko, that still defines Kyoto's historic neighborhoods today. As families prospered, they extended their homes backward rather than outward, buying up adjacent land behind their shop fronts rather than widening their street presence, which only deepened the narrow, elongated footprint over generations. Here's the design problem that shape creates, and the problem this entire video is really about. A house this narrow and this deep has almost no sidewalls exposed to the outside, since machiya were typically built as attached row houses, sharing walls with the neighboring buildings on either side. Light and fresh air can only enter from the front, the back, or straight down from above. Everything in the middle is at risk of being dark, stagnant, and closed off. Exactly the same challenge a modern narrow urban lot or a compact tiny home footprint runs into today, whether that's a row house squeezed onto a tight infill lot or a tiny home built long and narrow to maximize a small piece of land. What's remarkable is that Kyoto builders solved this problem centuries before mechanical ventilation or electric lighting existed as options. Every strategy we're about to walk through had to work using nothing but geometry, material choice, and airflow physics. From the street, a traditional machiya presents a modest, disciplined face, dark wood siding, often fire-treated for durability, and a distinctive latticework screen called koshi covering the ground floor windows. That lattice does something genuinely clever. It lets residents see out clearly, while keeping passers-by from seeing in. A privacy solution using nothing but geometry and wood, centuries before anyone thought to use tinted or one-way glass. The upper floor typically features small clay-plastered openings, called mushiko-mado, shaped like tiny cages set into the wall. Originally used for ventilation and light, without compromising the security of the upper floor. Rooflines are commonly finished in a straight, unadorned tile edge, called ichimonji kawara, a demanding but visually clean detail that gives even a narrow facade a sense of quiet precision. Skilled roof tile work, specifically prized for how difficult it is to execute a perfectly straight edge at that scale. Exterior and structural walls in a genuine machiya were often built from earthen material called tsuchikabe, layered clay, straw, and sand applied over a bamboo lattice frame. This wasn't a decorative or budget material choice. Earthen walls actively regulate interior humidity, absorbing excess moisture during Kyoto's notoriously humid summers, and releasing it back during drier periods, functioning as a passive climate buffer built directly into the wall assembly itself. But the real exterior story of a machiya isn't visible from the street at all. It's hidden deep inside the footprint, and that's where we're headed next. Step through the entrance, and a traditional machiya reveals its actual engineering. A long, earthen-floored corridor, called the Toriniwa, running the full depth of the building, from the front door to the rear. This passage historically housed the kitchen hearth and doubled as working space, but its real function was environmental. Its lower floor level, sitting beneath the raised wooden living floor beside it, created a channel that pulled air through the entire length of the house. And in the middle of that deep, narrow plan sits the feature this whole design is famous for: the tsuboniwa, a tiny enclosed courtyard garden, sometimes only a few square meters, tucked between rooms or alongside the corridor. It's easy to mistake the tsuboniwa for pure aesthetics: a stone lantern, a single maple tree, some moss, but its actual job is structural to the house's comfort. Enclosed on all sides by the building itself, the tsuboniwa pulls daylight and fresh air directly into the darkest, most landlocked part of the floor plan, the same part of a deep, narrow building that would otherwise have no natural light source at all. Some larger machiya add a second feature above the kitchen area called the Hibukuro, an open volume rising up through the ceiling, letting smoke and heat escape upward while pulling additional light down from above, working alongside the tsuboniwa rather than replacing it. Together, the Toriniwa's horizontal airflow and the tsuboniwa's vertical lightened air shaft solve the same core problem from two different directions, turning a shape that should be dark and stagnant in the middle into a house where every room stays connected to light, air, and a small piece of the outdoors. Interior rooms themselves lean toward flexibility as much as light, tatami-matted spaces divided by sliding shoji screens rather than fixed walls, meaning a single footprint can be reconfigured for different needs without any construction at all, a lesson in space efficiency that predates the modern open floor plan by 1,000 years. Many principal rooms also include a tokonoma, a slightly raised recessed alcove used to display a seasonal flower arrangement or a hanging scroll, a small, deliberate design gesture that gives even a narrow, functional room a fixed focal point and a sense of considered calm. Larger or wealthier machiya sometimes went further than a single tsuboniwa, placing a second or even third small courtyard deeper in the plan, near the rear garden or adjacent to a secondary sitting room, multiplying the light and air strategy at each point along the building's depth, rather than relying on just one courtyard to serve the entire footprint. This is a genuinely useful lesson for anyone designing a long, narrow, modern home. The deeper and longer the plan, the more these light and air breaks are needed, spaced along its length, rather than concentrated in just one spot. Applying this concept today isn't about replicating a historic Kyoto townhouse. It's about borrowing the courtyard and corridor strategy for a modern, narrow lot or small home build. And the cost story here is genuinely encouraging. For context, well-designed small homes and tiny houses in the 250 to 450 square foot range commonly run $45,000 to $80,000 to build in 2026, with efficient layout and smart design, not extra material spending, cited repeatedly as the actual difference between a cramped result and one that lives comfortably at that size. Budget tier. A simple light well, rather than a true walkable courtyard, a narrow vertical shaft or skylight void positioned at the center of a deep floor plan adds relatively little to a build, primarily framing and flashing costs around the opening. This captures the tsuboniwa's core function, pulling daylight into a landlocked center room without the added cost of a fully finished, walkable garden space. On a small home in the budget range, this modest addition still fits comfortably within the standard $45,000 to $80,000 range for a well-designed compact build. Mid-range tier. A genuine small walkable tsuboniwa-style courtyard, a few square meters, finished with gravel or paving, a single tree or simple planting, and glazed sliding doors on the rooms facing it, adds a more meaningful premium, mainly in waterproofing detail, drainage, and the additional glazed openings needed to make the courtyard a real visual and functional presence from multiple rooms. This tier also typically includes a version of the Toriniwa concept, a distinct transitional flooring material, like polished concrete or stone, marking a corridor-like path from entry to the rear of the home, reinforcing the airflow and circulation logic of the original design. High-spec tier. A fully integrated system, a genuine tsuboniwa courtyard, combined with a Hibukuro-style vertical volume above a kitchen or living space, premium natural stone or timber detailing throughout, and custom shoji-inspired sliding partitions replacing fixed interior walls, represents the most complete modern translation of the original Machiya strategy. This tier pushes toward the higher end of small home construction costs, comparable to premium finish-level builds in the broader small home and tiny house market, but delivers the full light, air, and flexible space benefit the original design was built around, not just a partial version of it. The honest takeaway: this isn't a luxury feature tax on a small home. Even at the budget tier, a simple light well solves the exact problem narrow lot and small footprint building already creates. And at every tier above that, the cost buys back real function, light, airflow, and flexible space, rather than pure decoration. It often pays for itself in reduced lighting and window costs elsewhere in the plan, since a well-placed central void can reduce how many side windows or skylights the rest of the home needs to stay comfortably lit. One more honest factor, specific to longer or deeper footprints. If your plan is long enough to genuinely benefit from a second light and air break, further along its depth, the multi-courtyard strategy larger Machiya used, that second void adds cost roughly proportional to the first, but it's rarely necessary on a true tiny home footprint under about 500 square feet. It becomes a worthwhile consideration, mainly on longer, narrow lot builds in the 800 square foot and up range, where a single central courtyard alone can't realistically reach every room. Quickly, what's worth knowing before borrowing this idea? 1. It demands deliberate planning, not retrofitting. A central courtyard works because the whole floor plan is organized around it from the start. Adding one into an already designed narrow footprint after the fact is far more difficult and costly than planning for it from day one. 2. It requires real waterproofing and drainage detail. An enclosed courtyard is still an open-air space, embedded inside a building envelope, and getting water to drain away from the surrounding structure correctly is a genuine engineering requirement, not an afterthought. 3. It sacrifices a small amount of usable floor area. Even a compact tsuboniwa-style courtyard takes up square footage that could otherwise be interior living space. A deliberate trade of floor area for light and air quality that's worth confirming fits your priorities on an already tight footprint. 4. Earthen or natural material construction isn't universally available or code simple everywhere. Traditional tsuchikabe wall construction and its humidity regulating benefit relied on specific regional materials and craftsmanship. A modern courtyard strategy build can absolutely borrow the layout logic without needing traditional earthen walls, but replicating every original material benefit exactly may require a specialist builder depending on your region. Quickly, here's how this strategy scales across different builds. The Lightwell Studio, a compact tiny home or ADU using a simple vertical skylight shaft at its center, capturing the core daylight benefit at minimal cost. The single tsuboniwa build, a small walkable courtyard positioned at the center of a modest, narrow-lot home, the most direct modern translation of the classic Kyoto layout. The Toriniwa-inspired corridor home, a design using a distinct, differently finished circulation path from front to back, echoing the airflow logic of the original earthen corridor. The multi-courtyard narrow home, a longer footprint using 2 light and air breaks spaced along its depth, suited to larger narrow-lot builds beyond typical tiny home scale. And the full traditional-inspired build, tsuboniwa, Hibukuro volume, shoji-style flexible partitions, and natural material detailing combined, the closest modern equivalent to an authentic Machiya. If you're building on a narrow urban lot where side windows aren't realistic, or you're designing a small footprint that risks feeling dark and closed off at its center, the Machiya's courtyard and corridor strategy is one of the most field-tested solutions in architectural history, genuinely proven over more than 1,000 years of continuous use. If your lot already has generous light and air access from multiple sides, a simpler, more conventional layout may serve you just as well, without the added planning complexity. So tell me in the comments, would you give up a bit of floor space for a tiny interior courtyard, bringing light into the center of your home, or does every square foot need to stay indoors for you? Let me know below. I'll see you in the next one.